My name is Natalie, and I'm on the marketing team here at Sync on Set, and I have with me my colleague Taylor from the product support team who will be leading you through today's tutorial. Before we jump into the demo, I just want to let you all know that to accommodate for social distancing, we are running these webinars remotely, so please excuse any interruptions or unexpected delays as this is not our usual setup. But now that we are ready to get going, let's cover what we're going to look at today. Today's webinar is designed for costume designers, assistant costume designers, costume supervisors, and coordinators who are all responsible for budgeting. And today we will look at budgeting by character type and miscellaneous, cost reports, tracking payments, assets, vendors, and some best practices. Now, while Taylor will be walking you through the demo, I will be monitoring for submitted questions, so please feel free to write in with questions as you think of them. You may submit questions by using the Q&A function located at the bottom of your screen, and we'll take some time after the demo to answer any questions. Once we have finished with the demo today, we'll send you a copy of today's recording along with links to our FAQ page, help articles, which also has additional videos. And that can all be found at our new help site, support.synconset.com. And now that we've covered the introduction, I'm going to pass things over to Taylor.
Thanks, Natalie, and hey, everyone. So my name's Taylor, and I'll be going through the demo portion of today's webinar. So during the demo today, we'll be covering how to navigate to the budgeting tool, when to start a new budget, budgeting by character type and miscellaneous items, money tracking, and then we'll finish up with some best practices. So just give me one moment here to get set up on my end, and we'll get started. Okay, so when you're ready to start budgeting, you can access our budgeting tool from any page within Continuity from our product switcher, which is located here in the top left corner. Once you click on the product switcher in the dropdown, you can select budgeting, and that'll take you over to our budget. If it's your first time accessing the budget, you'll land on this page. We typically recommend only starting your budget once you've built out your characters and their changes within Continuity. And the reason for this is so we can automatically transfer in those characters and changes into the budget. If for any reason you're not able to do this, there's no worries for that. You can always manually import them later. On this page, you have the opportunity to review your characters and deselect any which you don't want to have automatically imported into your budget. So for example, if you didn't want to import any background characters, you could deselect these boxes in line with their names. Once you're ready to start budgeting, you would click the blue Start Budgeting button and you could get started. For now, I'm going to move over to a more built-out budget for the demonstration. Okay, so the first time you land on your budget, it'll look something like this. So as you can see, we're on the Principal Characters tab. We also have a Background Characters tab, as well as a Miscellaneous Budgeting tab. First, we're going to talk about how to budget for principal characters. So as you can see, all the characters and their changes that we built out within Continuity are listed here within the budget already, since we've automatically imported them. If we want a budget for a character, we would just input the budgeted amount in the box in line with the character's name. So for example, if we're giving this character a budget of $5,000, we would input that here. And then we would carry on to the next character. So let's say this character is 4,000. And we'd carry on from here. So let's say 3,000 here. We also have the ability to budget down to a character's changes. So if budgeting just for a character total isn't sufficient and you need to provide more detail, you can actually input budget amounts for their changes in line with the changes here. So let's say this change has a budget of $250. We'd input that here. And this one's 300. And let's say this one's 3,000. So we'll put that here. So we just continue this process for the rest of the changes. And then once we're done, we'd come up here and we tick off this sum changes box. That's going to add up the budget amounts for all of your changes and add it to your character total. We also have the ability to budget down to a changes items. If we want to budget down to the changes items, we would go ahead and click this blue Add Item button in line with the change name. we provide that item with a name as well as a price. And then we would just continue that process for all the items within the change. Since we can't edit the order of items, it's important to note here that once you refresh the page, the items you've entered in first will appear at the top, with the items inputted last at the bottom. So just make sure you input them in the correct order if sequence is important. So we'll add another item, give it a price, and then we're finished. So once you've inputted your items' names and their budgets, you want to tick off the sum items box. That's going to add up the sum of the budgets for each individual item into the change total, which will in turn update the character total. We also sometimes see a mix of budgeting by change and by item, whereas the budget for the item is an explanation of the cost of the change. So for example, you can see here that this character typically has a lower budget for each of their changes, but our change 3 actually has a significantly higher budget amount. So if we wanted to demonstrate why this is reduction, we could use the item budgeting tool to do that. So let's say in change 3, this character is attending a black tie event and they wear a suit and they have a drink spilled on them. So we might actually need multiples of that suit in order to complete the scene. So we might input suit for event, and we'll write multi needed for spill. Then we would input the amount. So let's say the suit costs $700 and we need 3 suits because we're going to have multiple needed for this spill. Once we've updated the quantity, it will multiply the price and provide us with an item total. And then once we tick off the sum items box, it will update the change total as well as the character total here. So as you're inputting your budgeting amounts, I just wanted to point out our budget summary bar. So the amount shown in the blue bar at the top is the accumulated total for the entire budget. And then we also have it broken down by principal, background, as well as your miscellaneous items here. So now that we've covered how to budget for principal characters, let's talk about background characters. We can click the background tab to navigate to that view. So here we have all of our background characters that we built out within continuity. Depending on your preference, you might want to budget for your background characters individually. And if you're doing that, you would follow the same process as principal characters by inputting a character total for the budget here. So you just say input, let's say 500 for this group. We might have 600 for this group. Again, we can budget by change by inputting a change total here. So let's say their change was 500. And we can also create an item. So let's say this character has an apron. We can put that here. And let's say there's 8 of them. Great. A lot of the times we see we don't really require within the production to be budgeting for each background character individually. And if that's the case, we've actually provided this create new button here. And if you click that, you can actually create a background character group. So instead of budgeting for all the characters individually, we can create a group. So let's just say background group. This has the example. And let's say for all of our background characters, we have a total budget of $5,000. We would input that here. And then we would go ahead and click create. And then if we don't want to budget for these characters individually, we can just click the X in line with the characters' names. And that will actually remove these line items from any reports that you might be generating to provide to production. So now that we've covered principal and background, let's move on to miscellaneous budget items. So when we first access this page, you'll see that we have 3 categories listed by default. These are just suggestions and they can be deleted if they don't apply to your production. I wanted to point out that we shouldn't be existing any of these existing, we shouldn't be editing any of these existing miscellaneous category names in order to create entirely new categories, because any of the updates to these names will not automatically update within money tracking. So for example, it'd be totally fine to change something like alterations to something that's similar to alterations that would indicate the same thing. But if we're updating it to something completely different, like lunch, it actually won't update within the cost report. So I'm just going to jump ahead to show that. So when we're in the cost report and we scroll down to miscellaneous items, you're going to see that alterations hasn't been updated to reflect that change we made. So just keep that in mind when you're editing categories. As best practice, we should always delete the line item by clicking the X to the left of the item name. And then we would confirm with remove. And then we can create a new item by clicking the create new button and providing it with a name. We'll provide it with a budget total. And that way, when we go back to the cost report, you'll actually see that that line item is actually in here with the correct name. So before we move on to the cost report, I just wanted to pause and highlight 3 budget-specific reports that can only be accessed from the budget page. They can be accessed in the top right corner here where it says Print Reports. So you'll just click on that drop-down menu and then they'll appear. So our budget summary report will provide a summary of your principal, background, and miscellaneous budget. Our budget changes report will provide a summary of your budget with a more detailed breakdown of character changes. And then the budget items report will provide a summary of your budget with a more detailed breakdown of characters, changes, and items. So just to demonstrate, if we click on the budget summary report, the report will be generated here. And in this window, we'll have the ability to choose the destination. If you want to print it, you would choose a printer from the destination menu. And optionally, if you're using Google Chrome, you can choose to save it as a PDF rather than print it. For now, let's just go back to the budget. And let's move on to money tracking, where we can start tracking our payments. So first, we're going to take a look at the cost report. So the cost report provides a bird's eye view of how much you've budgeted versus how much you've spent. So it's useful to see how much of your budget is still remaining. So for example, within this table here, I've already filled out one line for our character Emily. You can see that we've inputted $493.25 in a purchase order, which is how much we've spent in total. We budgeted $500 for this character, which means we only have $6.75 remaining. We can view the cost report in a few different ways. So the default view is going to be by payment type, which is the view we're currently on, but we can navigate between purchase type as well as no details using these tabs. So when you're ready to start making edits, you can do so by clicking this green edit button. It's going to open up the editable fields here within the table. If you have your account codes from accounting, you can input those here. And if you need to make any edits to your character's accounting names, you can do so from here. While we're talking about accounting names, I just want to talk about the concept between the link between a character's budgeting and accounting names. So the character's budget name refers to the name of the character in both continuity and within the budget, whereas the accounting name refers to the name of the character only within money tracking. So a character's budget name can only be edited within continuity because those fields are linked, and a character's accounting name is not linked to its budget name. So if a change occurs to the character's budget name, their accounting name would need to be manually edited here if applicable. Within this edit menu, we actually also have the ability to create a new line item by clicking this button. And you'd use this feature if you want to track payments to a tracking group that doesn't exist within continuity, but only exists within the budget and money tracking. So let's say, for example, you had 5 principal characters that you'd like to budget and track payments for as a group, as well as individually by character. So we'd use this feature to create a separate line item to do so. So let's try that. So we'll create a line item and we will pick a code for it. And we will give it a name, just as an example. And we'll assign a budget. So we'll put an amount in here. And then we'll click create. So now that it's done, you'll see that this line item is now appearing in the cost report. And once you're ready to budget for the group, you can do so in the budget, and this line item will exist under the background tab. So we'll see that here. It's under group A. If you want to make edits to it, you can do so from here. And if you actually want to delete this group from the cost report, you would delete them from the budget. And you'll see that the group has actually gone away here. So within the edit menu, we also have the ability to group characters together. So let's build off our last example. So let's say instead of needing to budget for the characters as a group as well as individually, we just want to budget for particular characters as a group. So what we would do is we would find the characters on the list here, and we would tick off the boxes in line with the character names. And once we do so, we can go ahead and come up to the top and click group. We would enter in a line code again, and then we would provide them with the group. Once we're ready, we'll go ahead and click save. And then you'll see that the group's been created, and then those characters, line items, have been moved within the group. If you want to see who's in a group, or if you want to remove a character from the group, you can do so by clicking these outward facing arrows, which will open up this ungroup modal here. If you want to remove a character, you would click the X in line with the character's name, and then you would click submit. I just want to pause here and note that if we group characters together, all of their existing payments will be reassigned to the group. So if you change your mind and you remove a character from the group, all the payments that were originally assigned to the character will, excuse me. So just to reiterate on that, if you change your mind and you remove a character from the group, the payments that were originally assigned to the character will remain in the group and will be not reassigned back to the character. I also want to pause and talk about red account codes. So as you can see here, this character actually has an account code that appears in red. And what that indicates is that there's a conflict with the account code. So in the case of this character, the account code's red because the character shares an account code with another character in a different episode. This also could occur if the character has the account code has a different character in the account code, such as a letter or a symbol. You can see that creates the same conflict. Sometimes that's necessary, and some characters will share the same account code, or sometimes you will need to put a special character, but typically that's not the case, so it'll appear in red just to indicate that there's a conflict there. It's just important to note that if the account code appears in red, you won't actually be able to make edits to the character's accounting name. If you want to make edits to the accounting name within this menu, you would simply just need to resolve the conflict by changing the account code to something unique, then changing the character's accounting name and clicking done, and then you can change the account code back after. But that's just something to keep in mind. Next, let's move over to payments, where we can record new payments and view a summary of payments that have already been recorded. You can access that page by clicking payments in the gray navigation bar here at the top of the screen. So as you can see, this is a built-up production where I've already recorded some payments. And this is the default view of the table. It's going to be on the All tab of the payments page. We also have the ability to view the table based on the payment type. So here we have purchase orders, P cards, check requests, as well as petty cash. We can also filter and sort this table based on our preferences. So for if we'd like to only see one specific vendor, you'd come over here and click on the magnifying glass that appears in the column heading. And then we would, in the search bar that appeared under the column heading, we would go ahead and type in the vendor name to filter the results of the table. So as you can see, the table now only displays our H&M vendor. If you want to sort these column headings, all you have to do is click the arrows that exist beside the column heading. So if you click here, we're going to sort our tracking group in numerical order, and clicking it again will make it appear in the opposite order. So from ascending to descending, or from descending to ascending. Once we're satisfied with the way that the table looks, we can click here to print the report. So let's give this report a title. Since it displays our H&M payments, we can give it that name. And we'll go ahead and click print. So I just want to reiterate, this table is this print feature is actually sensitive to the information that's displayed on the table here. So if we were to go ahead and clear out our search for the vendor by clicking this X here, and then we were to generate the report again, it would actually generate a payments report for all of our payments rather than for that particular vendor. Once you're ready to file a payment, you would come up to the tabs here at the top and choose the one that corresponds with the payment type. So for example, let's say we're filing a purchase order. We click on this tab, and then we would click on the green Create Purchase Order button to open up the purchase order modal. So here we'll give the purchase order a number. Let's give it 1 here, and then we will choose a date from the dropdown. Then we'll choose a vendor. So as you can see, I already have some inputted, but if we wanted to create a unique one, we could just enter in a new name. So let's just say Gap, and that'll create a new vendor. And that's an existing vendor. We also would move on to input a type if applicable, and then we can choose an episode number. Our tracking groups here will be sensitive to whichever episode we select. So these are our tracking groups within episode 103, so they'll appear here. And then we'll provide a cost. So this will be the cost of the item without any applicable taxes. So let's say the cost of the item was $795. To the right of the cost, you're going to see this small currency symbol. If we click there, it's going to open up the tax and shipping modal. So here is where you'll enter in the tax rate. So in California, the sales tax might be 7.25%. So we would enter 0.0725. And then the program is going to automatically generate the applicable tax based off of that tax rate. If you paid to ship the item, you'd input that amount here, and then you'd click done. So here you'll see we have the cost of the item, and then to the right, we have the total cost that includes tax and shipping. To the right of the total cost, we have the asset box. If we tick off the asset box, this payment will appear on the assets page, which we'll cover next. Finally, to finish up with this payment, let's give it a description. So let's say that this is a leather jacket from All Saints. If we have another line we'd like to add to this purchase order, we'll click here to create a new line. And if you'd like to remove a line, you can do so by clicking the trash can in line with the line number. Once we're finished with the purchase order, we'll go ahead and click Save. And we can see that that's been saved. So let's move over to assets since we touched on those very briefly. You can access our assets page by clicking Assets in the gray navigation bar here at the top. So you can see our leather jackets appearing on this page since we marked it as an asset while recording it as a payment. As you can see, if you create a asset from the payment while filing a payment, the only information that'll be recorded here will be the payment number, the vendor, the description, and the total. So to fill out any more applicable information, let's just click the line item to open up these editable fields. We can add a photo by clicking this green plus button, and we can upload a photo from our hard drive here. We can also assign it a style and add in a brand and a size. And then once we're happy, we'll go ahead and click this green check mark, and that'll go ahead and save the asset. We can print a list of our assets with this print button here. We'll provide the report with a name and go ahead and click print. And that'll appear here. Again, just like with the payments page, if we go ahead and we filter the table to only show a particular vendor, if we print this assets report, it's only going to show what's appearing here in the table. So just keep that in mind. Let's also talk about our vendors tab, which is next. So you can keep track of your vendors and their contract in their contact information here. So as you add vendors to your payments, the list will be created automatically. So if you created a new vendor, so see we created Gap while recording that payment, you'll see that all the other information will need to be filled out manually on this page. If we want to add in contact information, like an address or a contact name, we would do so by clicking the pencil icon in line with the vendor name. And then you can add in any applicable notes. And then call before pickup. And we can add in a name if we'd like. And we go ahead and click update when we're finished. We can see that that's been inputted. If you're no longer working with a vendor and they're no longer applicable, you can click the red trash icon in line with the vendor name and then click delete. And if you'd like to create a new vendor rather than doing so from the payments page, you can click create vendor and fill out the information here. Next, let's move on to the reports tab where you can generate a cost report, vendor list, payment forms, and an asset report. So we have the list of all the reports you can generate here and their names. Some of the reports require you to choose an episode. These ones would be episode specific. Once you're ready to generate a report, you would go ahead and click generate report in line with the report name. And then that report will be generated here. Again, if you want to print a report, you would choose a destination as an actual printer. And if you have Google Chrome, alternatively, you can save it as a PDF to save some paper. As we wrap up just wanted to touch on one more thing. We have these reports available in both portrait and landscape orientation. These reports actually contain the same data, but we provide both because of the landscape formatting requirements of many Canadian productions. So we have those there as an option. So as we wrap up our demo for budgeting and money tracking for the costume department, we just want us to circle back and summarize a few best practices we've touched on. When you're budgeting for items within a change, always input your items in a top-down order as you'd like them to appear within the budget. Make sure you update a character's accounting name when updating their budget name within continuity. You can compare the names while in edit mode on the cost report page. When budgeting for miscellaneous items, never update existing categories. Always delete them and create new ones. You might notice red account codes on a cost report if multiple characters within the production have the same accounting code. You can simply ignore the codes or update them if necessary. Rather than printing, save paper by downloading your reports as a PDF. And for everything else, check out our help center at support.synconset.com. So that concludes the demo portion of today's webinar. Thanks for following along with me. I'm going to pass things back to Natalie to review any questions that might have come in.
All right, thank you for that great demo, Taylor. And just to let everyone know, we're going to get started with Q&A in just a few minutes, but I wanted to give you a chance to write in with any last questions before we start. And while you're doing that, I also want to let you know that we will try to get to as many questions as we can, but if for any reason your question does not get answered live, please don't worry. We are recording all questions and we will be sending out additional information following this webinar. So give us just a few minutes and we will get started with the Q&A. And it looks like we're getting quite a few questions, so we're just going to give 1 or 2 more minutes and then we will get started.
All right, thanks, Natalie. So we've had quite a few questions come in, so I'm going to get to as many as I can. So I'm just going to start from the top here. So someone asked, do you have to have all of your changes set up first before starting your budget? You don't actually have to. It's just recommended because if you start your budget before building out your changes, you just would have to manually add them to the budget later, and that isn't too difficult of a process. I'm actually going to jump into and start sharing my screen just to kind of demonstrate how that would look. So let's go 1 moment to get that started up here. Okay, just give me 1 moment. So I'll go back to the budget and you can see that we have all of these changes built out already. If you added a change into continuity after starting your budget initially, you're going to come in and you'll see your character listed and the changes will look like this. It just indicates they've been added into continuity, but they're not added into your budget. So it's actually really simple. You just click add to character budget, and then you can go ahead and budget for those items. So nothing too complicated. Let me just take a look here. So another person said, what's the point of inputting the character total amount if you're just going to sum all the changes? So that's actually a really good question. So you actually don't have to enter in a character total if you're budgeting by change. So let's scroll down to a different character to show that. So let's go to Kevin. So let's say we're just budgeting by change. What you can do is just enter in the total amounts for the changes, and you'll see that it'll automatically be populated there. But I can definitely understand how that could have been a bit confusing. But if you're budgeting by change, it'll just happen automatically. I guess I was just indicating that you can update a character total here to budget for the character. But if you're budgeting by change, you wouldn't have to input a character total. So that's totally good. Thanks for asking. Let me see here. So another person asked, why can you see multiple episodes? So I just wanted to point out within continuity, we've added in the feature to view multiple episodes at once, which is some feedback we've had with our previous version. For now, the budget, you're only going to be able to see one episode's budget at a time because the budget is still episode specific. So rather than being a checkbox, let me go back to continuity to show that. So you can choose multiple episodes at once here. Whereas in the budget, excuse me, you see it's episode specific. So 104, we haven't even started the budget there. That was the one for my example. And then in 103, we actually have a budget built out. So it's actually fully episode specific. Let me just take a look. So someone else asked, is there currently a way to track labor? So that's a great question. And we get asked this a lot, but right now we don't have a feature for tracking labor. It's not something that's currently on our product roadmap, but we always will continue to share these requests with our product team. We always welcome suggestions and feedback, and we review feedback on a really regular basis when deciding on what updates we're going to be making to the program. So you can always send those in by clicking the chat icon in the bottom right corner, and we're always happy to record that feedback for you. Another question I have here is it possible to import vendors across seasons? So I'm just going to navigate to the vendor tab to show that. So as you build out your payments, you're going to see this list is going to get really long. And I think this is a really great question. When you start a new season, it's actually going to be a blank page, and it would be really helpful to be able to import these vendors over. But at this time, we don't have that feature available. So my recommendation would be just to kind of cleanly copy and paste the vendor information into a separate document. And then you can copy from that document into the new season for now, just as a workaround in the meantime. Another question that's similar to this is, can you export payments? So let me navigate to the payments page to demonstrate that. So I guess what the question is can you export payments as a separate file? So similar to inventory in continuity, you'd be able to generate a CSV file, but within payments, we don't actually have that feature yet. So what you would do as a workaround is you can actually cleanly copy and paste this table into a spreadsheet document like Excel or Sheets. So if you were to hit Command C on your keyboard, you would be able to just cleanly paste that into a spreadsheet. So all that information will come out nicely for you. Let me just take a look. So someone asked, do you have a program in which we can practice? That's a really great question. You actually can create from your My Productions page. It's going to be this film strip icon in the top right corner. Let's click there. And then you can start a new production. You'll be able to start a free trial, and it'll be available for 1 week. If you reach out to us by clicking the chat icon on the bottom right corner, typically the free trials don't allow budgeting and money tracking. But if you reach out to us and just let us know that you're working on it just as a kind of a sandbox to get comfortable with the feature, we'd be happy to just temporarily upgrade that production for you, so you'll be able to get comfortable with that. So again, you would just click new production and set up your production from there. And if you need any further clarification on how to do that, you can just let us know. So it looks like that's all the time we have for questions for now. So I'm going to pass things back to Natalie to finish up today's webinar.
All right. Thank you, Taylor. And I just want to touch on something that Taylor just mentioned about the free trial that you get whenever you create a new production, and you can create multiple productions and get a free trial. That usually only lasts for 7 days, but as we are under stay-at-home orders, and this is kind of a unique situation, we definitely want to be able to extend a free trial to anyone who wants more than 7 days to work on a test project. So if you do need help extending your free trial, or if you have any questions about the free trial or about the products just in general, please feel free to reach out to us. And that kind of brings me to our next slide. I just want to again say thank you to everyone who submitted a question. And I know that we got quite a few. So if we did not get to your question, please sit tight. We'll be sending out additional information following this webinar. And if you do think of anything outside of today's webinar, please always feel free to reach out to us. You can do that by clicking on the chat function of our website. You can email us at support@synconset.com, or you can give us a phone call. Our support team is available Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and they'd be happy to answer your questions that way. Thank you to everyone who took the time to join us for today's webinar. We know many of you have been using SyncOnTech for a long time, and we really appreciate that you participated. So if you could please complete our feedback survey following this webinar, we'd love to know how we did and if there are any things that we could do to improve in the future. And please also be sure to keep an eye out for announcements from us about upcoming webinars. We will be launching new webinars each month, touching on different aspects of our continuity and budgeting product, and we would love to have you join us. So please, again, enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you for participating.